You're watching Know Your History with Tim McKain, where I interview history makers and teachers of history. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with the former president of the Buffalo Cavalry National Association, Willie Edley Jr. How you doing today, sir?
Doing great, Tim. How about you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. As the former president of the Buffalo Soldiers Cavalry National Association, what were some of the duties that you had to do as president?
Well, first to ensure that I carry out the wishes of the organization, and to help bring attention to the history and legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers, to put that history and legacy out there in the forefront so people would know about that. And we do that or did that in a lot of different ways. If you've ever been to a Panther football game, you may have seen Buffalo Soldiers presenting colors. If you were at a jumper classic in Charlotte or a homecoming game, you would see Buffalo Soldiers presenting colors. We were very busy and active in parades and other things so that people could see us and then start asking the question, who are these guys? That gave us an opportunity to share the history, not just here in North Carolina, but across the nation and abroad.
Wow.
We partnered with various Walmart and McDonald's, any agency, business, corporation who'd be willing to help us share this story. And I think we've done a pretty good job, because I think more people know about the Buffalo Soldiers today than they would have had we not had this campaign to get the information out there.
Absolutely, absolutely. One of the reasons why the organization was formed, and it was formed, I believe, in 1967, I believe. And why do you believe the original founders wanted to create this association to preserve the history? Do you feel like personally that the reason why they started it was because they were not getting the recognition they deserved during that time?
I think that was part of it. You know, one of the challenges for the organization is to celebrate and perpetuate the history of the Buffalo Soldiers. And in addition to being able to do that, they wanted to also remember their comrades. Most of the original guys actually served in those regiments. It was an opportunity for them to get together and share the legacy and share the stories. And one of the things that we did several years ago in Greensboro, we hosted one of the national reunions there. We decided that we were going to record those old troopers' stories. And man, they've got some serious stories about some of the things that they encountered, the racism, the not being recognized. I mean, just really the tough things that they went through to serve this country. And so that became a part of the objective. It became a real standard for us as younger folks at the time to try and get to work and help share this legacy of the Buffalo Soldiers. And I promise you, whenever you had some of those original guys and you put them there in a crowd, I mean, people would just gravitate, man, because they wanted to hear those stories. That sometimes, like, and we have this reunion every year, and I'll tell you a little bit about this year's going to be kind of different. But since 1967, they have been having a reunion every year to share the story of the Buffalo Soldiers, and for those guys themselves to get together and recall and you know, just fellowship with their comrades, man. You know, they were an elite group of guys. You could sit down, and I found myself sitting down talking to those guys, and man, I look, and the time is gone. There's never enough time to hear all the stories.
Yes, sir.
One of the reasons that we decided to record. And so here in North Carolina, we have in the archives audios of all of our troopers who were present at the time, who had served in those facilities, man. I mean, in those units. And I'm telling you, it's some amazing stories.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. What were some of your favorite personal stories that you've heard over the years?
Well, Trooper Andre Lejeune actually lived here in the Charlotte area for a very long time. And we got to be really, really close. And I remember him just sharing stories with me. One in particular was when he was on his way to out west, but he had to go through Atlanta to, the train made a stop in Atlanta. Well, he says he got, off the train and just killing some time waiting for the train to leave again. And being thirsty, he went to a water fountain and drank from a whites only water fountain. Well, needless to say, he got arrested. They took him downtown and asked him what he was doing. And he said, I have my orders here, et cetera, et cetera. He said he gave the police officer the orders. Police officer couldn't read the orders. He had to tell him, what did those orders say? And he told me he was on his way to Fort Clark, et cetera, and his train was going to be leaving at such and such. And so they said, well, we're going to keep you here at the police station until it's time for your train to leave so you won't get in any trouble. Mm-hmm. That's all about drinking out of a white water fountain.
Wow.
He shared a story with me that while in Texas and doing some training, they went to a store and he asked for some crackers and a soda. Well, the folks in the store who were obviously white got offended by that, and it caused a ruckus, and Trooper Lejeune was the kind of guy, extremely bright, actually served as the clerk for the general in his unit.
Wow.
And but he was his own man, and so consequently got him in a lot of trouble. He had a bunch of stories about those kinds of things that he went through. But remember that those guys in their service to this country, those in past days and modern day times, part of the story for me is not just what they did while they were in the military. Congressional Medal honor winners, service merit, they did a tremendous job. But when they got out of the units, they came back to the communities, became doctors, attorneys, business people. Wow. They became the pillar of society after their service in the regiments. So those stories go on and on and on. Trooper Waddell, who became one of the first Black veterinarians in the Corps. There's so many little mini stories that you can't share them all. So what you have to do is pick people's interests so they'll go out and do some research themselves.
Absolutely, absolutely. Just growing up, how much pride did you get from, as a young man who was also in the military? How much pride did you get not only knowing these stories or meeting these people who fought for our country? How much pride did you feel for not only our country, but also for Blackness, for that Black pride? Even though, we were, quote unquote, for a long time, we were second-class citizens in this country. We still fought for this country.
Exactly.
So what are your thoughts on just the proudness of being Black, as well as serving this country?
Well, when I got out of high school and I went off to college for a year and spent more time enjoying being away from home and in college than I was studying, et cetera, et cetera. But one of the things that always interested me was military history. And the notion of these Buffalo Soldiers, these guys who were forerunners, who struggled and worked hard just to earn their place. They had a saying that if something went wrong, they were going to always stand up because they didn't want another trooper to have to come behind them and step over them. So that reflected the pride they had in those units. As a young man, I enlisted in the 82nd Airborne Division, and 82nd Airborne Division, all pumped up, man, your head so big you can't walk through doors. But one of the things that I started, the Black guys in my unit doing is calling ourselves Buffalo Soldiers, because I wanted to remember that history. I wanted them to know that history. And so that's what we started doing. That gave us an opportunity to share the story, man. And the only thing people knew about Buffalo Soldiers was the Bob Marley song. You remember that, Buffalo Soldiers?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Buffalo Soldiers said, "Oh, that's the Bob Marley song." Yeah, well, there's a lot more to the story than the Bob Marley song.
Absolutely.
When I left the military, still had that interest in military history and the Buffalo Soldiers, Tuskegee Airmen, Mumford Point Marines. So I joined the National Guard in North Carolina. And in this unit, they had a little mini museum. Well, nobody in the museum looked like me, or none of the other African Americans serving in the unit. And so I had a long conversation with the commander. I said, "Sir, there needs to be somebody in this museum that looks like these young troops that you're trying to train." And it just kind of grew from there, not only in my unit, but we formed an organization here in North Carolina, the Greater North Carolina chapter of Buffalo Soldiers, got chartered by the National, and it kind of got started from there.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So when it comes to history, and many people know about the Tuskegee Airmen, we kind of talked about it before the interview started, but I definitely want to know your perspective on it, from the fact that the Tuskegee Airmen, they were celebrated, and it almost seems like, just from the surface level, that they were the main African American cavalry regiment. You know what I'm saying? What are your thoughts on the Buffalo Soldiers not necessarily getting the same recognition that the Tuskegee Airmen have gotten throughout the years, and why do you think that is?
Well, because when the conversation started about African Americans and their service, the Tuskegee Airmen were there. I mean, more people knew about the Tuskegee Airmen and some of their exploits, and didn't go back far enough. Because had they gone back far enough, they would have realized that every Black who serves in the military today, and even then, stood on the shoulders of the Buffalo Soldiers, because they were the first, recognized, sanctioned military colored unit in this country. Not to say that Blacks had not served in the military, because we served during all the conflicts. But when Congress allowed for the formation of those regiments after the Civil War, it was the first peacetime service of Black men in America. So Tuskegee Airmen stood on, and all Mumford Point Marines, all those guys stood on the Buffalo Soldiers' shoulder, and they got the recognition because people knew about them, didn't know about the Buffalo Soldiers, because a lot about the Buffalo Soldiers had been left out of history books.
I got you. When it comes to African Americans and the military, it seems to me that we as a culture, we do not celebrate the veterans like we should. How do you think African Americans can better recognize our veterans, and why do you think that we don't recognize our veterans as much as we should?
That's an interesting question. I'm not sure why. I think African Americans see military service sometimes different. We have those men who serve and given their lives, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. When there's another faction of African Americans who don't feel like we should serve, or we shouldn't have served, because, why are you serving this country who doesn't love you? So we have, as a culture, we have mixed feelings about this service.
Absolutely.
And so, but I think we need to recognize, and some folks certainly have, that's part of our legacy. We have a history of service to this country. We've given as much as anybody, in fact, maybe more so than anybody.
Yes.
So veterans who have served this country in spite of all the obstacles, man, I think they're heroes. The Buffalo Soldiers were true American heroes to serve this country and to do the job that they did under the circumstances that they did.
100%.
So churches and community organizations should recognize these veterans. And when veterans go off and they serve this country, a lot of them come back, especially from war. I mean, they're not the same people. So we just need to do a better job as a community in taking care of those guys and recognizing them and honoring them for their service.
Absolutely. How has the military helped you become a man and become a leader that you are today?
I think the military offers an opportunity for growth, for self-discovery. You find out things in the military that you don't know about yourself, man. You know, when you're 17 and 18 years old, you're just a speckle in the big scheme of things. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So we need the level of discipline. We need the level of learning, the worldly experience that comes with that. I just think it makes you a better person, well-rounded person. And, you know, you can kind of, I'm a big educational advocate, but I think you can do both. I think, and I maybe hate to say this, but I suspect that America would be better off today had we still had the draft in some form, so that all these folks who are out here with pants hanging way down on their ankles and who are misguided. See, our young people think that living a good life and being a contributor means that you have to be a big baller. You got to have a big bling, got to have a lot of money and all. But that's not the basis of a good life to me. I mean, if you have a good foundation and you're honest, you work hard, and you're caring and giving to people, you don't have to be a famous basketball star or football star or a superstar to contribute to your community. All of us have some value that we can give. And I think we need to concentrate on that value and give what we can give as individuals. And I think as much of this young man who has served in the military for 20 something years and been overseas and done things for this country as I do a football player who is obviously a superstar and contributing, but may not be given to his community in the way that he should. You know what I'm saying?
I do.
So you don't have to be a superstar. If you just be you and be a contributing member of society, you're doing good.
Absolutely. 100% agree.
You don't always have to be part of them.
Yes, sir. Absolutely. Since you're someone who is a historian, someone who studies history, what is your favorite cavalry regiment in the Buffalo Soldiers history?
Oh man, you know, that's a really tough question, because both the 9th and 10th and some of the regiments, they all were tremendous folks, man. And I can't take anything away. The exploits, you know, we have a Medal of Honor winner William McBriar, who grew up or lived in Greensboro for a while. And a few years back, we did a historical marker in his honor. McBriar was leading a group of Buffalo soldiers chasing some Indians who had escaped from the Indian reservation. Well, the Indians found a cave, and they were in the cave, and the soldiers couldn't get to them. Well, William McBriar was an expert marksman. And what he started doing was firing shots, ricocheting off the wall of the cave that made the Indians give up and saved numerous lives. His fellow troopers, citizens, and they got those Indians back to the reservation just because this guy was an expert marksman and a smart guy. and got those Indians to give up by ricocheting rounds off of a cave wall.
Mm.
Medal of Honor.
Medal of Honor. That's amazing. That's amazing.
Many stories like that.
Many stories. I cannot wait. I need to actually do a little studying myself on some of that. I know a little bit. I my father was somebody who's an historian, and he always told me about the greatness of the Buffalo Soldiers, and that's one of the reasons why I had to make sure that I had to get an interview with somebody from the organization or from the association, because I believe that the Buffalo Soldiers' history should be preserved and highlighted just as much as the Tuskegee Airmen would, because at the end of the day, that's a part of our history. That's a part of the greatness of African Americans. Even with everything that was going on during that time, it shows a group of men and women who dedicated their lives for a country that didn't necessarily always show the support that our people gave to this country,
Exactly. Tim, let me take you on a little trip. If you imagine being on the desert plains in 1867, and if you're riding on a stagecoach and you're attacked by Indians. Now, if you look at cowboys and westerns as we know them, we watched on TV, the cavalry comes to the rescue. More often than not, they were portrayed as white cavalrymen. When the truth is, you were more likely to be rescued by a black cavalryman because they were 1/3 of the force on the Western Plains.
Amazing.
Imagine getting up in the morning and it's 30-something degrees, and you got a horse and you got saddlebags, and you got a few little items in your bags, but you spend the whole day navigating that desert terrain. At this point, it is probably 97, close to 100 and something degrees. And you have on this wool uniform, hot, but if you put on some long johns under it and you sweat a little bit, it gives you a little insulation. So you're spending time on the desert, you're separated from your family, not sure where most of them are, but you are determined that you're going to make your mark because they don't think you're going to make it anyway. They're looking for these regiments to fail, and they're saying, heck no, we're not going to fail. And they served in an amazing way, distinguished service. And that's the real story of the Buffalo Soldiers.
Wow. It's
the personal sacrifices. If I could go back in time for a little bit, I'd like to maybe go spend maybe a couple of days with him, Tim. I don't know if I got the fortitude to be able to spend as much time with him as I'd like, especially, not at this age. But I think it would have been so amazing, man, to just spend some time in that time period.
Absolutely. I do think just to see their strength, like you said, just to see their personal sacrifice and, their courage, because I know it was wonderful.
No doubt.
Thank you very much, Willie. I really appreciate your time. Where can the people find your association online? Any information on social media or anything?
Yeah, we have a website. It's www.910hcav.org. And that's the national website. I meant to tell you, we're having our 155th anniversary reunion. Normally it's a reunion where everybody gets together and we take a hotel over for about 7 or 8 days. But because of the pandemic, we're doing a virtual reunion this year. I'd like to invite you and all your listeners to join in. You can go to that website. You'll see 155th anniversary reunion and register and take advantage. We're going to be doing some history presentations. We're going to recognize a local soldier down there who actually served in the unit, ended up going back to Columbia and starting one of the first Black casket companies in South Carolina. But that, and we've got Celebrate Freedom Foundation on board. to do some things and talk about with our kids and just a whole bunch of stuff. I mean, y'all need to come on. We got some history presentations from our national historians, some virtual museum tours. So it's going to be really interesting. It's an opportunity to learn more about buffalo surgery.
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you very much, Willie, for not only for your service, but for the education of the Buffalo soldiers. We really appreciate it, sir.
Well, you're quite welcome, Tim. And listen, top of the day to you. And if I could do anything or provide you with any additional information, please don't hesitate to call me.
Yes, sir, I will. You have an incredible day.
Well, thank you. You too. Bye-bye.
Bye.